and visitors may obtain a request to be heard from staff for any presentation they may have for the meeting. In accordance with policy, requests to be heard forms must be submitted to the secretary within the first 5 minutes of the board meeting in order to be heard at this meeting. Agenda items are subject to reorder at the discretion of the board president. Please attend the entire meeting to ensure you're able to hear any discussion. Thank you.
In the focus areas, under my focus areas?
Go from there.
No.
Okay. Pursuant to Section 841411 of the Nebraska statutes, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001 and the Board of Educational Service Unit Number 19 will be held on October 1st, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. in the Board Meeting Room of the Teacher Administrative Center, 3215 Cummings Street. The agenda will be kept current and available for public inspection in the office of the Secretary of the Board of Education at the Administrative Building during regular working hours. Pursuant to Section 841412 of the Nebraska statutes, the public is hereby informed that a current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted on the posted in the meeting room on the north wall. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And Vice President America will lead us in the OPS vision and mission statement.
All right, first up is our vision, every student, every day, prepared for success. And our mission, Omaha Public Schools prepares all students to excel in college, career, and life.
Thank you, Vice President America. Roll call, please.
Cassidy,
Here.
Goding,
Present.
Hallman,
Here.
America,
Present.
Perlman,
Here.
Ryan, Scanlon,
Present.
Smith,
Here.
Snow.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. Ms. Ryan informed us earlier that she's under the weather, so I will entertain a motion to excuse her from tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice President America, second by Mr. Perlman. Roll call, please.
Smith,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Goding,
Aye.
Hallman,
Aye.
America,
Aye.
Perlman,
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Motion carries. Moving on to School Spotlight, Mrs. Monique Farmer.
Good evening, Board President Snow, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Logan. We are pleased this evening to present Bryan High School as tonight's OPS Proud Spotlight. This spring, Bryan's Urban Agriculture College and Career Academy was designated as a National Model Academy by the National Career Academy Coalition. The reviewers commended Bryan's plan for sustaining a program for students, parents, and the community, along with the rigor of the curriculum and relationships with industry partners. Bryan High is the first school in the state of Nebraska to achieve this status. The team will be recognized in November at the National Career Academy Coalition Conference. This recognition will also allow Bryan High to host learning labs around model academies that draw people from all over the country. This is just one highlight of the great work that is happening at Bryan High School. We salute the students, the teachers, the staff, and the administrators at Bryan High for their accomplishments. And at this time, I would like to welcome Principal Robert Aranda to the podium for some brief remarks.
Good afternoon, or I'm sorry, good evening. I'm always excited to come talk about the wonderful things that are happening at Bryan High School, especially from our kids. I just want to make sure that the board understands that when you guys approve programs, this is just one of the great programs that OPS has allowed into our schools. This is unique. It's a career academy. And 6 years ago, we went to that first National Career Academy Coalition Conference. I'm competitive, and I said in 6 years, we were going to receive that national model status. And sure enough, 6 years later, we achieved that focus. But when I come back to programs, I want to make sure that last year was a good year at Bryan High School. Our journalism department, that's another program. First place sweepstakes, 18 individual awards at the Winter Journalism Contest. We had 7 national award winners, 3 superior, 2 excellent, 2 honorable mention. And then our Orator newspaper earned the highest distinction at the Cornhusker Award games. In addition to our journalism, our DECA was voted the state chapter of the year. And in order to be a state chapter of the year, you have to be nominated to be the chapter of the month, and we were the chapter of the month for November. So our DECA is doing wonderful things. Our Educators Rising group also has, it's the second consecutive year that we've have a state officer representing Oklahoma Public Schools. So again, our FFA is highlighted today, and last year we had 2 state officers. One of them is the state vice president of the Nebraska FFA chapter, and Brittany Gamma's here, and so is Nicholas. They graduated last year, but we invited them back. The problem is here, because it's super hot outside, so they just love to wear their jackets. So I commend them on that. But just one last highlight on our model status. We needed to score between 115 and 130, and we scored 128.4. And that's one of the highest ratings achieved nationwide, they tell us. So again, first school in Nebraska to get this award, and we're super excited. And number one, just want to make sure that thank you guys for taking a chance to let this program into Bryan High School. And then this is the results right here. So any questions, we'll bring them up here. Come on, guys.
And if you guys can introduce yourselves, what grade you in, or what are you doing post-high school, and something about the award, or just being a part of FFA.
So my name is Nicholas Birdsley. I'm 17 years old. I graduated Bryan High School last year, and I'm currently a freshman at UNL studying turf and landscape management with a side of horticulture. And I plan on owning my own landscaping business after college. And some of my experiences in my FFA chapter taught me that, I was looking at agriculture through a keyhole in the start, and everything that I saw, I recognized that everybody's been a part of it since the day they were born, and whether they realize it or not, it affects every single thing we do in our daily lives, and whether people recognize it or not, it affects every single thing whether they realize it or not, they've made a difference in it, whether that was simply purchasing a food product or producing it.
Thank you.
My name is Jalissa Kidder. I'm currently a senior at Omaha Bryan, and I just got recruited into being an officer for the academy, but I have already taken on roles that I was not previously in. Like, I've helped set up different events and been in different programs for the meetings, and I have taken on higher roles and more responsibility in the program itself. I'm not really looking for a career in ag, but it's helping me and giving me college experience that I had not had before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dean Davis. I am 17. I'm a senior at Bryan High, and with the Urban Ag FFA Academy, it's been a great experience. I've met a lot of people. I've gotten to do things through the Urban Ag Academy that I never thought I'd be able to do, and they've just taught me so much through it. And it's a great program. You can join it. It'll give you plenty of career opportunities. And after high school, I'm planning on not doing anything for agriculture, but I'm planning on joining the U.S. Marine Corps.
Thank you.
I'm Bella O'Hara. I'm currently a junior. I'm 16, and after high school, I want to go to UNO and major in writing.
Awesome. Thank you.
My name is Benny Hope, and right now I'm a junior at Bryan High, and I will be, after high school, I hope to just go to UNO instead of, like, I don't know what I'm really going to major in or anything like that. I don't know what career I'm going to be in. Joining FFA really opens my eyes and allows me to expand my horizons and allow me to see what careers could open up and allow me to do. And it really gives me college experience and also leadership abilities.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Brittany Gamma, and I'm currently a freshman at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, majoring in agricultural education with the intentions to come back to Omaha and starting up another chapter down here. So FFA it really helped me reconnect back to my roots, as I was born in Jalisco, Mexico. I was raised on a dairy farm for the first 4 years of my life before my parents decided to make the move to the United States. And I was raised in Omaha, went to Omaha Public Schools my entire life. FFA came and it helped me reconnect and be at peace with who I was and accept that this is my background and this is part of what makes me.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. Real quick, does anybody on the board table have any comments or questions? Mrs. Godding.
Well, I have a question, and I think you all have the largest chapter in the state, is that correct? Can you tell us how many students participate in FFA at Bryan High? Do you know? Oh gosh, I didn't mean to throw you all off.
That's 180.
180. Wow. Okay, so I grew up in a small agriculture town. I really appreciate what you had to say. I never joined FFA. I always wanted the cool jackets, and they are still cool jackets. So I'm just so proud of all of you for participating. Whether you end up going into agricultural or not, it gives you such a great opportunity to learn leadership skills, learn about other elements of the environment, and so I think it's great. So thank you so much for being here, and congratulations.
Vice President America.
Oh, you know I'm going to talk. It's so exciting to have you all here today. Just from the time I've been on the board, watching this Career Academy grow and watching the FFA and the programs grow. I remember when we were talking about building chicken coops, and then all of a sudden there were chicken, and there were rabbits, and there were quail. If you didn't know, there's animals that are part of this program, which is pretty cool. And then if some of my fellow board members remember, we had the proposal where we bought basically an old shipping container that was turned into an aquaponic growing system. So you can grow things. And are we still working on fish?
Yes. Well, we were at the bond, so that section was closed and the electricity was shut down. So it just started last week. So we're going to start, as I call it, start killing things. So as we start seeing how much this and this and that.
Yes, but it's been exciting to watch the program grow, to watch students graduate. I hope some of you continue on and get your FFA degree, because I know that's a huge achievement within the FFA organization, having spent a few years on East Campus down at UNL. So I'm just glad you all could be here tonight so that we could recognize you and your fellow students for all the things you've accomplished.
Dr. Logan.
I had the pleasure of visiting last week and seeing the aquaponics lab and speaking with so many students and meeting many of the teachers, some of them for a second time. And it's your leadership, Mr. Aranda, and I want to make sure that we recognize that. We are so proud of all of you students. Please know that without great principal leadership, none of this can happen. So it was Mr. Aranda's vision, along with that of his staff, that really made this possible. And thank you for being competitive. I was just looking up where the National Career Academy Conference is and when it is, because I'd love to be there to see you receive the award, as well as learn more about. I actually have done a lot of that work, but I am really excited about working alongside you, Principal Aranda, and your team to expand the opportunities for your young people. So I just wanted to thank Mr. Aranda for his leadership. It is remarkable.
And that's our team there. They're the ones that make the magic happen right there. So.
If you are a staff of Bryan High School or a parent, could you guys please stand and be recognized? Thank you, guys. And then students or former students, could you guys, we would love to shake your hand and wish you guys good luck and congratulations on this significant achievement.
Just kind of stand to the side.
Okay, I'm going to have you guys take one big giant step forward, please. There you go.
So we get the students in the front.
Yeah.
Would you, one of you be willing to get
Certainly.
one? Yep.
Trade off. Yeah, I can take the phone.
Got it?
All right, this way. Big smiles. There we go.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
I got just a couple more.
Sure.
There we go. That is A+ perfect.
1, 2, 3. I'll take one more. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Those are some really nice jackets. They're corduroy, I didn't know that. Moving on to our next item, Board and Superintendent Communications. Dr. Logan.
Good evening, everyone. On October 1st, there will be a presentation on the schedule for the construction of Phase 2 of the bond. There has been some information being communicated out in the community that is erroneous, and I look forward to sharing the plan and timeline for construction as we continue to build world-class learning spaces for our students. In addition, the calendars for 1920 and 2021, that's not 1920 the year, that's 2019, 2020, and 2020-21 are on the October 1st agenda as well. Today, the first of what will now be a quarterly Facebook Live opportunity for parents took place, hosted by Harrison Elementary. We are grateful to Principal Dr. Haynes, who hosted us today along with her staff. Parents were able to log in and ask questions. Several parents will receive a follow-up to student-specific questions. As of 2 p.m. today, we had over 1,200 views. I would like to thank the community for participating in the survey as a part of my entry into the district. There were a record 10,650 responses from unique IP addresses. I look forward to reading the survey responses and comments, which totals 983 pages, as I continue to learn about our district. We encourage community members and parents to come out and enjoy our athletic contests, whether it's cross-country or tennis or football. Please come out and enjoy our students. Our students always appreciate your presence and support of our student athletes. Congratulations to Buffett Magnet Middle School 5th grader Liam Smithberg for being selected to play on the USA team by USA Baseball. Smithberg was offered the opportunity after competing in the Select 20 tournament in Kansas City, Kansas. Also, congratulations to King Science and Technology Magnet Center art teacher Emily Olson, that's the Olson and Four are written together, so I apologize, Emily Olson, for being selected as the 2018 Francis Thurber Pre-Service Art Educator of the Year. We're very proud of Ms. Olson. Congratulations to Crest Ridge Magnet Elementary School for earning national recognition for their certified Nature Explorer classroom from the Nature Explorer program. The classroom will offer interactive elements such as musical instruments made of natural materials, a garden, pathway areas, and natural materials for building and created art. This was funded through the Sherwood Foundation, and we appreciate their support. Congratulations to Ida Brightman, Special Education Director, for receiving recognition from the National Council for Negro Women for her work as an advocate for students with disabilities. She was recognized in Miss Janice Gilmore's column today in the Omaha World Herald. Ms. Brightman has worked as a special education teacher, instructional coach, and a special education supervisor. Congratulations on your award, Ms. Brightman, and thank you for all of you that you do for our kids. Lastly, we congratulate Kim Jones, currently the principal of Menalusa, on her appointment as the new principal of the new elementary school located right across the street from here at 32nd and Birch Street. Principal Jones will begin her tenure sometime in 2019. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Board member comments? Vice President America?
Since this is our last board meeting before this happens, just wanted to take an opportunity to remind, I'm sure our board knows, but the community, that Omaha Education Week is coming up September 24th through the 28th. Specifically, there are open houses going on in different types of schools Monday through Thursday that week. So if you have kids in school, it's a wonderful opportunity to go to school, check out the school, talk to the teacher again, and check in. But if you don't have kids in school and you have a school in your neighborhood, it's a great opportunity to go see what's going on in that school building that you drive by all the time, and to talk to the principal, see what things are happening within our community and the great things that are happening every day in our school. So I hope everyone has a chance to make it to a few open houses September 24th through the 28th.
Seeing no more public board comments, we're moving on to public comment. We have one speaker. The board has adopted policy 8346. Oh, Larry, you can come on up to the podium. Have adopted policy 8346, which provides public comment for a period of 1 hour. That same policy limits individual speakers to a maximum of 5 minutes. We ask that you respect that time limit. Mr. Ray will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining and when you have 30 seconds remaining. If anyone here is in need of an interpreter, please let Mr. Ray know and one will be provided for you. If the subject of your public comment is related to a particular student or staff member, we ask that you not mention the student or staff member by name and instead provide that information to Mr. Ray. He will assist us in looking in those types of details for you. If you do not get an opportunity to speak and would like to submit any written commentary, please provide it to Mr. Ray. He will make sure each board member gets a copy. As a reminder, we please ask that you please spell your name and state your address before you begin your public comment. It is 6:55. Mr. Storr.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha. I wonder how many in the room tonight are aware that this is Constitution Day. Fantastic. My handout here is something I'd like to suggest. Since we're so close to an election, and I understand in the State House that we're doing away with some civics things out of the education bills, and I don't think I like that. So I'd like to see our students take part in an exercise of lobbying their state senators for Article 5 of the Constitution. The handout is talking about Article 5. There is a project sponsored by these people, but but I'm not speaking for that. I'm speaking for Article 5 only. It's about amending the Constitution when your government is faltering or maybe not even functioning. Instead of an armed revolution, the Founding Fathers said, here's a way for citizens to directly alter their Constitution when necessary. Not by a constitutional convention, and this is a problem. So many people I've talked to, including the state senators, back off, they get scared, they throw their hands up in the air. We're not going to have a constitutional convention. They never said that. There cannot be a constitutional convention unless Congress does that. This is a way to go around Congress. You and I can be involved in this. And we can attempt to be delegates to a convention here in Omaha. Lead the way. Why don't Omaha lead the way? Why don't our kids lead the way here? And convince our state legislators to speak for us. And send a simple petition to Congress for what's on here. You may have to do a little reading. In that process, you have to read and understand the words of Article 5. I think I mentioned this before. Words like shall, may, will, or. They have specific meanings. And you have to consider that there are two ways of proposing amendments, and there are also two ways of ratifying amendments. If we take this step and we get enough states, we can take that away from Washington and give it back to the people. It's out of their hands then. They have to call it if enough states send a petition. And it's a simple petition. It's not a law. I'm not asking them to change the law. But we can then do that, and we could start that process here in the middle of the country. And I'd like to see Omaha do that. Over 2 years, talking with various state legislators, I was amazed at how little people know about Article 5 of the Constitution. And it's time we have a national debate of how do we alter our government when it's not performing. Do we go into the streets, or do we alter it through amendment process? Founding Fathers were very clear on one thing. We are not a democracy. We're not a democratic republic like the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Look what happened to that. A Democratic Republic of France in the Revolution. Look what happened to that. We are a republic, and Ben Franklin said so, and so did the other Founding Fathers. But everybody uses the word our democracy. So we're being spoon-fed a bill of goods here.
1 minute.
Thank you. It's not a democracy. But everybody thinks it is. And 51%, but how many of 51% would actually vote? So you might end up with 51% of 20 people that vote. They make the decisions for us? I don't think so. Thank you very much.
Moving on to the consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda that is before us.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Smith, second by Dr. Holman. Any abstentions? Roll call, please.
Snow.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Gadding.
Aye.
Hallman.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Perlman.
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Motion carries. 1 second. All right, we do not have any action items. We do have an information item, J2A, but before we get to that, everyone does have a paper copy of the September policy changes. They will appear on the October 1st meeting agenda for the information, reading on the 10th, and second reading on consent on November 5th. Please read them over. If you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Mr. Ray or Dr. Logan or myself.
That's fine. Yeah, that's okay.
And I believe they are ready. Good evening.
Fire when ready. Good evening.
Yes,
For the record, Bruce Leffler, Emeritus of Escom Corp., Omaha, and Tyler Mullen. I'll let him introduce himself.
From Barrett Home Law Firm, 1700 Farnham Street.
So, we just wanted to go over some information based on the approval of the $409,900,000 of voter-approved general obligation bonds for the second phase of the school district's improvement plans. We put together, just as through a couple of meetings with the board, administrative and staff, or excuse me, with the administration and staff, some potential timing and some strategic planning that we've at least looked at. As kind of a half step back, we will call for the board members that have been here, at least certainly, the process we went through with the first $421 million in the first approval of the process was we issued those bonds in essentially 3 separate issues over 3 years. And those bonds were offered at public sale to, it's a process we go through that basically sets the necessary documentation. We work with bond counsel to put in place. The offering document gets in place. We send it out essentially to the investing world, and on a particular day we pick those people that have interest in buying the school district's bonds, bid on those bonds, and over the last 3 tranches or issues that we've had good success through that process with the number of firms that participate, at least in the business bidding process, and subsequently the process allows them to resubmit bids and the number of bids that they were willing to submit to drive that interest rate to the lowest level possible given on that particular date. This next go-around, we've been, again, working with the administration. What we're anticipating is to get an issue in place prior to the end of the year, so hopefully by the end of November, first part of December, we would have the first set of dollars in place. One thing just about the issuance of debt for the boards to recall, the two separate, the two ranges I think we would talk about. Okay, one question would be, okay, why don't we just issue all $409 million at one time, have it all in place, and move forward? The difference on that is based on the interest rate you would be paying, the interest expense on the bonds while those monies set, not necessarily idle, but in today's current environment, you're not able to earn within investments the money that you're paying out on the interest on the bonds. So for every $100 million that was sitting in the bank not being used for some subsequent period of time, if the differential in that interest rate between what you're paying in interest and what you're earning on the money in the bank is 1.5%, that's $1.5 million a year that you'd have to pay an additional interest expense. So while that money's sitting there not being spent, it's costing you, $1.5 million over a year because you're, the easy number is you're paying 3.5% interest on the bonds, but you're earning 2% interest in the investment. So the second part of that is, okay, let's issue it in smaller pieces, if, $50 million or $100 million a piece for 4 or 5, 6, 8 issues as necessary. The problem with that is there are certain fixed expenses associated with doing a bond issue regardless of its size, and that increases your issuance expense for those subsequent multiple issuances of those bonds. So we try to kind of find a happy medium between let's put enough money in place that we think the district will be expending within the next year, 9 months to a year, and then look for as the next set of monies are due and necessary, that we'll do a second bond issue, which was the process we worked on the first time. The strategic planning that we went through just kind of goes through that we're currently in the process of drawing necessary documentation. We're getting updates from the school boards or school district's administration for the offering document. We anticipate within the next couple of weeks we'll have that information out to the rating agencies. The school district's bonds are currently rated in the AA category. We want to get that information confirmed by those rating agencies because that makes a difference to the people that are bidding on your bonds. AAA being the highest rating, AA is the next level, so that's always a positive from the school district standpoint. We get that information to the rating agencies for their review. In this particular instance, the rating agencies are planning on being in the Omaha area in the middle to late October, so we're trying to schedule an opportunity to have them come to a face-to-face meeting with the administration to kind of talk about the school district's finances, how they stand, and answer any questions they have to that regard. But through that process, we're working on the necessary documentation to be able to meet the timetable. The only other thing that I guess within the strategic planning document is there has been some talk, and there was talk about this in the previous bond offerings as well, providing opportunities for local investments, whether it's institutional investors, banks, or individuals. Again, that's certainly a process we can review, we can show options to the district, but that falls into that category again of maybe having more, a fourth or fifth bond issue in place in order to do that, and the costs associated with having to split out a separate issue for that particular offering. But we're more than happy to answer any questions the board would have to that regard, and the processes that would be necessary to put that in place. Lastly, I think we did have the timetable that was handed out. I don't know if you, let me see, you want to get that next section up, I guess. And as I mentioned, we're already kind of through a lot of the documentation process on this, and the only key thing on this from the board's perspective, other than any questions and additional information, we would anticipate at the October 15 board meeting that we would have a resolution to be considered by the board for authorization that would authorize the first bond sale for the second project expense. So we would have all the necessary resolution in place. Barrett Home will be working on that to have in front of the board for the October 15th that would authorize the bonds. We would anticipate, certainly within a couple weeks after that authorization of the issuance of the bonds, that we'd actually be in the market with the bonds, and as we have in the past, come back to the board and with the final results of what that sale was. Currently, based on the estimates that we're looking at for the expenditures coming up in the immediate, is probably an $80 million. We were talking $100 million, but we powered that down to $80 million offering, as I mentioned state on the timetable. Based on the projects that are going to be spent out of that next $409 million, we would anticipate by the tail end of 2019 we would be offering a $200 million. That would basically encompass probably the real expenditures for the two high school projects, and then anticipate probably in 2020 that third and last piece done. Just again on our schedule that we're currently looking at. I guess I'd stop there to see if there's any specific questions the board might have about the process or any other questions from that standpoint on the bonds.
If you could just
certainly
go through the entire piece, and then we can pepper you with questions after. Unless you have any.
That's pretty much it, I think.
You at the end? Okay.
Yeah, we tried to make it short and sweet as we could.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, I just had, first of all, thank you for the timetable that you guys have provided for us and going through on the first document. I have a question about the bond offering to local institutional investors, banks. Could you, I know you mentioned that you could go down that route and explain, but could you elaborate a little bit more of what that looks like and the benefit or the, as well as the negative to it?
Pros and cons,
obviously we know there's a cost to it.
Right,
but
right.
What is made up in that cost, and what's the benefit to the community of allowing local institutions?
Excuse me. Well, we can certainly, what we've seen in the past in other issues, not necessarily for Omaha School Board, is we can certainly put together and have conversations with the local banks to see what their interest is in dollars and cents as far as what their appetite would be for an offering coming from Omaha Public Schools. The other piece of that puzzle would be it would need to fit into the schedule that we currently have for the Omaha Public Schools. And the difference being, if somebody wanted to buy, if we had a group that wanted to buy $30 or $40 million worth of bonds, and that's kind of where their appetite would, that would have to still fit in. They may want to buy in the first 10 years, but we don't have room for that in the first 10 years based on the current schedule that we're looking at. So it would have to fit to that regard. But we could certainly put together and carve out, as you were, a piece, certainly, to make available based on the appetite that we think we would see in the market. Now, I say what we think we would see. Before we go down that road, I think we would certainly want to get enough confirmation from those folks involved that they would
understand.
Yeah, that they had the appetite to take that amount of bonds. You don't want to go out for a small amount to that particular issue. But the side light of that is two things happen to you, and that is the number one is additional expense, obviously, associated with just doing a bond issue. That would be rating agency expenses that you have in order to get those bonds rated as well. Certainly legal expenses and underwriting expenses and associated with the bond issue. So, whether that's 4 issues rather than 3 or 5 issues rather than 3 or 4, again, there's just additional issuance expenses that would be associated with a subsequent issue from that standpoint.
So that cost could vary.
Yeah, that cost can vary. It's probably, again, in reality, it's between $50,000 to $100,000, and there are certain ways that we can, depending upon the timing of that type of issue, try to lower those expenses as well to make that happen. There's obviously positivity to making bonds available to the local market. These are the folks that pay taxes and help pay from that standpoint. the other piece, I guess, to play devil's advocate within the bond bidding process, those folks certainly have opportunity to either join a syndicate that's going to be bidding on the bonds or put a syndicate of their own together to try to bid on the bonds as they are offered in the public environment as well. So that's just the other side. I'm more than welcome to, or more than willing to, do the board's bidding to that regard and putting something together and providing those options.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Just from my knowledge, I only know what
Yes.
I can research or what you guys
Yeah,
explain.
no, I understand.
I don't think anybody really at the table knows the interest from the business
Right.
banking community.
Certainly.
And I think, in my opinion, that we don't know if they're interested. If they are
Right.
interested, what is that cost? Is it 50? Is it 100? I mean, obviously, we need to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars.
Right.
But before we even go down that, are there any banks locally interested in participating?
And then it becomes a question of,
How do you
the
stay
question
on
that the
this
board always
account?
is going to have, what's a local bank, what does a local bank mean, and what their sales to local banks mean? Is it bonds that they're going to hold in their portfolio, or are they going out to the entire network, and then they no longer become local banks or things to that regard? Again, just those are the questions that will end up coming up in that discussion.
I understand.
Yeah, and, go ahead.
Mark? Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Well, I had a question about how much could this end up costing us over the long term, from the beginning to the completion of the program, with that money just sitting there?
Well, what we're attempting to do as an example in this first offering, or at least what we're anticipating the first offering to be at $80 million, we would think that those monies will be spent down, or be committed to certainly, and the majority of it spent down within a 9 to 12 month period as we roll into 2019. Then what we would need, our timing wise, as we're looking to do, is then say, okay, how much over the next 12 months or 18 months are we going to need? We'll be talking to Jacob certainly a lot in that regard as far as what they expect the expenditures to be. And so that next tranche will be sized accordingly to the following 12 to 18 months of expenditures. And then we just basically get to that third piece is kind of just, again, that's the leftover spot, and whatever is left, if that gets us into 2020 or 21, we work accordingly. The only difference that we work on, we try to at least be flexible enough with having documents in place so that if we see opportunities in the market where interest rates are maybe more favorable today than we might think there are 2 or 3 months from now, we'll at least come to the board with that at least option to say, hey, it may be better off if we were to issue a little bit sooner than we planned on, just because we think some certain things are happening, and elections have a tendency to make interest rates change and things to that regard. So we try to minimize, I guess what I'm saying is we try to minimize that differential between what you're earning and what you're paying in interest expense. Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Gotti?
So I just have a few thoughts. One, I think, and let me ask Connie this for sure, the money has to be spent within a certain time period according to state statute, and I think that's 5 years from the time we go out for issue. Is that correct?
We have a tax law, federal tax law that's 3 years. You have to have an expectation of spending the money within 3 years from the time you receive it.
Right.
Yeah. Now, there are things that can happen to that money that it doesn't have to be spent within 3 years, but your expectations need to be in place, correct?
Right, so that's why we
That's another part of the
wouldn't,
time.
exactly, so we couldn't do all of that work in that period of time, so that's one of the reasons why it ends up getting split into various tranches.
That also helps, yes, yes.
So I think that's one of them. I know we had the conversation about doing a smaller offering for potentially some of the institutions in town the last time we did this, and any extra money we spent is just money that we don't get to put into the cost of construction in any building. So I think that's one of the things we took into consideration. The other, and I remember having this conversation, but I'm not quite sure if I'm getting this accurate, but I think sometimes you've got the larger institutions which are bidding, they can bid that to a really favorable rate for us. Sometimes when you're doing a small offering with a smaller group, institutions, they may not be able to drive that interest rate quite as low as what you might get from a large institutional entity. Is that possible?
I mean, yeah, I can give you anecdotal evidence on both sides of that.
Yeah.
That sometimes doing the local offering, you can drive the interest rates a little bit lower because folks are more interested, but The reality, and the second piece of that puzzle that I've always said to the board, though, is the bidding process that you go through is very hard for anybody to criticize you for
Right.
having gone that process.
Right, right.
That's,
And
again,
and I do remember that.
whether that's right or
very
wrong
well.
at the day that you did it, the reality is you took the lowest bid that was available to the board on that day.
No matter what happens.
No matter what
that's the one
happens,
you get.
the day before or the day after.
Exactly.
Yes,
So, and it could
exactly.
be different from one
Yeah,
day
it
to the
could be
next
different
day,
one day to
right?
different, yeah, so.
So I guess I probably don't have an appetite for spending more to do a smaller issuance, just because you don't really know where that's going to potentially end up. It may not end up with anyone who even lives within the Omaha Public Schools boundaries. And if that was your whole intent,
That I would say, the other side of that argument, I would agree with the point of saying that the only problem with the bidding process is you don't have that opportunity to provide the bonds locally because they're sold to a larger New York firm and they send them wherever they send them to.
Right.
Now, there are some, I'm only saying this again, to the point that, you know, I'll look into the opportunity. There might be some things we can do in contacting those folks that bid on the bonds and say, hey, we have some people here that might be interested, and give them a call or that
Right.
type of item. That still doesn't guarantee that those things happen, but we
Right.
can at least talk about it.
or whether they can purchase
Yes,
that
they can
volume.
purchase, right.
Correct. So on the first paragraph, we talk about the interest rates, and I think those are the interest rates at that date, not necessarily, that's not, or is that the coupon?
No, that's
not
the
coupon.
average, that's the
That-
borrowing cost for those specific issues.
Okay.
The total borrowing cost involved, right?
And we had anticipated it to be,
We were talking at least 4% back on the original Phase 1 issues.
Right.
Yeah, if not 4.5, quite frankly, but I can't remember. It was at least 4%.
yeah, I was thinking it was closer, I was thinking somewhere between 4 and 4.5,
Right,
right. And so these were the actual issuance.
Those were the actual interest rates that we got on the bonds at the time, correct?
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Scanlon.
You had mentioned that, there was a reason why we didn't want to go out for too much money up front, because then it sits and we're paying interest. And I guess on the, the counter argument is,
Yes.
well, interest rates are going up.
Yes.
Could you speak to that so we can at least understand, I guess where that level is, where it's better to wait, even though interest rates might go up a quarter of a point or
Yes, yeah.
half a point or?
Yeah, certainly, understand. Yeah, if we could predict the interest rates, you're right. The trickier part of the questions that you're asking is, in any, for the most part, I'll say basically in any school bond issue we work with, understanding the dynamics of the levy and the increases that would be necessary to a levy and the collection of those funds that you levy today, you don't collect until, April of next year, you don't collect until August of next year. The highest amount of pressure to a school district's levy, especially in a bond issue similar to this, is in the earlier years, because your valuation, certainly we're anticipating, not that we're guaranteeing, but we're anticipating to see valuation increases to the school district as we have seen in the past. You're building new schools to take care of new students in new areas that are developing. You're picking up valuations and those types of ideas. The pressure to the highest amount of pressure to the school district is in that first 4 or 5 years, and so it tends to be, at least from the perspective of raising your levy, it tends to be more important to make sure that you minimize the interest expense in those earlier years than it is the dynamics of interest expense on higher rates as the higher rate environment. You always have the opportunity, in particular, your bond issues in the past have been 25-year bond issues. Those bonds are callable within a 10-year period of time. You always have the opportunity to refinance those bonds at some point in time in the structure of the issue. So in an environment where you could have issued your $400 million at 3.75%, but you only get to that second piece at 4% instead, you're hopefully in a situation where you can gather some of that back through a refinance. But the reality of the situation is, let's use the example, if we did $409 million today, using my example of we issued $300 million more than we needed, that would increase interest expense by $4.5 million on this 1.5% differential rate. So you got $300 million outstanding. that you're paying 3.5% interest rate and getting 2% interest investment on, that's $4.5 million that you're going to have to pay on debt service next year. And what we're trying to do is minimize that interest expense impact to the district and to the taxpayer, which is why we also try to, we understand that there's interest rate risk, certainly, but it's offset, we think, at least by the interest expense, minimizing the interest expense, it'd be if you issued all the bonds. Yeah.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Okay. Oh, Mrs. Godin, sorry. I thought you were, because the...
No, sorry, I didn't think about this, but I think in the 421 million, when we issued those, they were variable rate. Was that variable?
Well, no.
Can you explain that to me?
Okay, when we do, as an example, do a 25-year bond issue, the bonds that mature in year 1, 2, and 3 have very low interest rates on them because that person that buys that bond is only giving you their money for a year or two. So your return to them is less than 1%. The person that gives you his money for 25 years, you got to give them a higher interest rate. So the rates on the previous bonds, or the yields on the previous bonds, may have gone from 1% out to 4%. But when you blend all those yields in, you come up with the average borrowing cost here of the 3.21 or whatever was, yeah, in the first paragraph there.
Okay,
so
that's
each
what I wanted to
individual
understand.
maturity has a separate interest rate on it within the bond offering, but when we report back to you, we basically come back and say your total borrowing cost was X as a blend of those rates, yes.
Thank you so much. I
Yes.
wanted to get a better understanding of how that
Understand.
works, so I appreciate that.
That was helpful. Mr. Perlman?
Just a couple quick questions.
Certainly.
What would lead to the need to issue long-term bonds, like the 25-year you mentioned? Is it just the demand and the need in the marketplace? In other words...
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we structure the bond issue maturities in for two separate reasons. Number one, you have the opportunity to match up with the useful life of the project being financed. Okay. And number two is, if you start pushing bonds out to 30 and 35 years, as an example, those are, the majority of the marketplace is issuing bonds within the 20 to 25 year range. Okay. When you get to 30, 35, 40 years, the market, to a certain degree, demands a higher interest rate. Maybe the yield curve gets a little bit steeper out at that far, so it costs you more interest expense to do so. To shorten it up to 15 years would be the example. This extreme example would be, okay, we want to get out of debt as quickly as possible. Let's pay our bonds off in 15 years. Well, what you're doing at that particular point in time is you're putting more stress on those taxpayers that are going to pay your bonds off in 15 years, and those people that enjoy the benefits of the school district expenditures in years 20 and 25 don't participate. So you're trying to blend that participation of the repayment over a larger group of people that will be utilizing those facilities over a longer period of time, balanced to the effect of trying to manage your debt portfolio, if you want to call it that, to the extent that you're not paying your bonds out beyond the useful life of your facility, so you're still paying on a building that you're now renovating or tearing down and redoing. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And my other question is, can you give us a history of the bond ratings that OPS has had, say, in the 2014 issuance, and what we expect to see now, and the impact that a lower bond rating?
Well, the bond, I'm going to stumble on the time frame, but in previous years, going back to the early 2000s, and I'm trying to remember, I think it might have been when we started the process for the first set of bonds. The district used to have a AAA bond rating, and I'm going to stump myself on Moody's or S&P, but it had a AAA bond rating from one of the rating agency companies, had a AA1 rating from the second bond issue company, which is the one step below that. Subsequent to that, and I think, again, I'm going to say within the last 5 years, both rating agencies have dropped that rating down to their second AA rating, which is a AA plus, or excuse me, which is a AA standalone, or a, excuse me, it's AA2, excuse me, AA2. I'll get you the write-ups for that, or I'll at least make them available for the board to review. The bigger part of that in the last number of years has been the pension for the school district concern. Now, that is unfortunately twofold. Quite frankly, I would just say from the standpoint of the school district's obvious concerns about the pension as it currently stands, number one. And number two, I would call it somewhat nationwide concern of the rating agencies, or more of a review on the rating agencies, or focus from the rating agencies on the pensions for everybody that they rate, only because we've seen Detroit, we've seen some of those things happen, that has raised a level of importance to the rating agencies as well. But yeah, so at the AA2 or AA category, again, that's still the third highest rating category for bonds. Doesn't mean that your cost of borrowing is probably a little bit higher, but not significantly higher than it was at the AAA level. But you may be talking 5 basis points or 0.5% or 0.05%, excuse me, from that standpoint.
And that 0.5 is incremental for each step typically, or is it?
Well, it's your overall cost. It's your overall cost, basically. So yeah, so if you were able to borrow at 3.2% at a AAA rate, you're borrowing at 3.25, 3.27 at the AA rate.
Right, but should, and
yes,
to emphasize should, just
yes.
Is it incremental? Is it 5 basis point per drop, or is it very?
No. The difference between the AA category where the school district currently is versus when you were at the AAA, AA category, I think is I'm going to say, I'll be conservative and say less than 10 basis points differential. And the other piece of that puzzle is we have seen, certainly from that standpoint, less AAAs out there than we saw previously out in the environment as well. Now, I will say that the rating agencies have had some very in-depth conversations over the last, because again, between the issuance of bonds that we have done, or the school district has done, excuse me, and an annual review, whether you do a bond issue or not, the rating agencies have been in touch with the school administration and your staff on an annual basis to ask these questions, get financial. So it's not, the information that they have is as current as the information available, and it's no great surprise to them. So from your standpoint of, I can't guess what the rating agencies, I can't know what the rating agencies are going to do, but based on our previous conversations with them, and given the circumstance where the board currently is and the school district is, they're aware of everything that's there, and I can't see them making any significant changes as it currently stands to the rating. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Mrs. Godin.
I'm wondering, and I remember, and maybe Matt could find it in the workshop, Mr. Perlman, your question prompted me to remember something that we talked about in the workshop, which was life expectancy of the bond work that we were doing. And so we talked about how much of that work was 15 to 20-year work, and whether or not a 25-year bond was maybe necessarily the way we wanted to go with that, or maybe we wanted to pull down to 20. So maybe I don't know that we've seen that since the final number happened, the 409, so I'm just wondering if maybe operations staff could pull that for us, just to show us what that would be, and whether or not that's a good conversation of 20 versus 25 or not, and what that does to the interest rate. I don't know either, but it's probably, I think your question is a good one, and it probably prompts us at least being thoughtful about that. You don't want to be paying for a bond after you've already put stuff in the dumpster and you're on your second round.
Certainly. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for presenting today. For me, I don't know about my colleagues, but for me, if you could just have that conversation with the local institutions.
Certainly.
And let us know as soon as possible if they are interested, and if then we can talk about how do we fit it within the timeline that we have here.
Well, I guess I would only offer this from the standpoint.
If the board decides to spend additional funds for a local purchase.
Here's my, let me just go down one path on that. The basic timetable we have is only essentially for the first offering that we're talking about at the public sales standpoint of $80 million. So we also, I'm saying anytime after that, I guess this process I'm getting to, anytime as we roll into, first part of 2019, we can certainly, we're talking about a separate issue no matter how we slice it.
Yes.
So we have timing-wise, we had more than enough time. Right.
Just assuming that you would know the pulse of them better, and
we can certainly get those feelers out.
They are interested. Does this board want to go down that route? That's something we can have discussion in 2019.
It's from a separate standpoint. That makes sense.
Mr. Scanlon.
Yes.
I have no support for spending more taxpayer money to simply have a PR, feel good, hey, let's do this locally. We need to do what's in the best interest. How do we maximize the bond funds that the public generously approved? I'm in no way supportive of spending more money to make a local bank feel better. They have professional networks that they can, as Bruce had said, they can go buy some and do that on a smaller scale, but we need to take the taxpayer dollars that they have allowed us to spend and maximize that. So no, I'm in no way supportive of some PR stunt.
Mr. Perlman?
I generally concur with Mr. Scanlon, but the bigger point is there's no board authority for that directive, and so I'd ask that we
Right.
wait until there's a board directive. As a
Certainly.
whole. Thank you.
Okay. All right, fair
I'm
enough.
simply just
I understand what
trying
you're
to
saying.
dig
No.
into that information. Real quick, receipt of reports. Thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you very much.
We
Sorry,
have
Tyler.
CBOC update on here. The CBOC update on the receipt of reports, and just to let you guys know, I do believe Mr. Ray and Dr. Logan did send out an email about adding additional board members to the CBOC committee. If I'm correct. So if you guys
That's correct. Yep.
So if you guys have anybody that you want to recommend from your community to sit on that, please do remember almost 2/3 of this bond is in South Omaha. So additional, not board members, sorry. Because the current board members are Mr. Scanlon, Vice President America, and myself. If you do want to serve on that committee, I'm sure nobody will oppose you on that as well. And real quick, that's it. Vice President America?
I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, and legal counsels pending litigation and legal advice.
There's a motion on the floor to go into closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Vice President America, second by Dr. Holman. Roll call, please.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Goding,
Aye.
Holman,
Aye.
America,
Aye.
Perlman,
Aye.
Scanlon,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Ada.
Motion carries. Let me remind the board that the purpose for closed session is for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals, to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, and legal counsel, pending litigation and legal advice. Let the record reflect the board went into closed session at 7:34. Let the record reflect the board came out of closed session at 8 p.m. Let the record reflect the meeting is adjourned at 8.